The notification came at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. Not a sound, not a call, just a number that rewrote everything I thought I knew about my family. $28,419.63. Withdrawn. My name is Nora Callahan, and I'm going to tell you exactly how the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally used my identity like a skeleton key to unlock everything I had ever built. I was 31 years old. A software engineer in Austin, Texas, 3 years into a job I had clawed my way into with no connections, no nepotism, no safety net. I had been saving since I was 24. Every birthday check, every bonus, every dollar I didn't spend on takeout or clothes or the trips my coworkers posted about every other weekend. I was saving for one thing: a house. My own front door. My own mailbox with my name on it and nobody else's. The closing was scheduled for a Thursday, 48 hours away. I had been up late finishing the last of the paperwork when my phone buzzed. My mortgage lender's name on the screen. I assumed it was something routine, a final checklist item, a signature I had forgotten. I answered. "Miss Callahan, I'm so sorry to be reaching out at this hour. We've run the final credit check as required before closing, and we're seeing something that wasn't there 90 days ago. There's an open personal loan on your report. $28,419.63. Opened 6 weeks ago. We can't proceed until this is resolved." I sat completely still at my kitchen table for what felt like a very long time. I hadn't opened any loan. I hadn't signed anything. I hadn't walked into any bank or clicked any link or filled out any application. But there it was. My social security number. My date of birth. My mother's maiden name as the security answer. My brother's handwriting on a signature that was supposed to be mine. I knew before I even made the call. The way you know a storm is coming before the sky changes color. You just feel it in your chest. I called my brother first. He picked up on the second ring, which told me he was awake, which told me he was waiting. "Hey, I was going to call you tomorrow," he said, and his voice had that careful, rehearsed calm that I had been hearing my whole life. The tone he used right before he needed something. "There's a loan in my name," I said. $28,000. "Did you open it?" Silence. 3 seconds. 4. Then, "Look, it's complicated." I was going to explain everything. I just needed time to get back on my feet. "Did you forge my signature?" "It wasn't like that. I used some of your information. Yeah, but I was going to pay it all back before you even noticed. The closing is Thursday, right?" I figured I'd have it handled by... I hung up. I called my mother. She answered on the first ring. "Nora, before you say anything, just listen. Your brother is in a very bad place right now. He lost his job 4 months ago and he didn't want to tell you because you've already done so much. He didn't have any other options. He just needed a bridge loan to get through until..." "Mom, did you know?" Another silence. Softer than my brother's. More rehearsed. "He told me a few weeks ago. I told him he had to fix it before Thursday. He promised he would." There it was. Not a betrayal in the dark. A betrayal in the light, with a deadline attached. A plan to hand it back before I ever noticed it was gone. As if the theft was only real if I found out. As if my name, my credit, the 7 years of disciplined sacrifice I had poured into that credit score only mattered to the degree that I was aware of it being used. "You knew," I said. "You knew and you didn't tell me. He's your brother. He's family. You've helped us before. I'm calling the police." My mother's voice shifted. The softness evaporated immediately, the way it always did when the conversation stopped being manageable. "Don't be dramatic. You'll ruin his life over paperwork. This is what families do. They work things out. You're not going to pick a house over your own brother." I was quiet for a moment. I thought about the 3-bedroom house with the yellow door and the oak tree in the backyard that I had driven past 6 times just to see it in different light. I thought about the closing costs I had already wired. I thought about the 7 years. "I'm not picking a house over my brother," I said. "I'm picking myself." I ended the call. I didn't slam the phone down. I just placed it face down on the table and sat in the silence of my apartment for exactly 4 minutes. Then I opened my laptop and started making a list. First, I called my lender back and told them what had happened. Identity theft. Unauthorized use. I used those exact words, not family situation, not misunderstanding, not it's complicated. I said my brother had fraudulently opened a loan using my personal information and I would be filing a police report within the hour. The lender said they would pause the closing and work with me. They were kind about it. That kindness almost broke me more than anything else had. Second, I drove to the police station at 5 in the morning. The officer at the desk looked tired and I probably looked worse. I filed the report. I said my brother's full name, his address, his phone number. I signed the form. The officer told me this was a felony and asked if I was sure. I said yes. He nodded and did not seem surprised. Third, I called my bank and placed a fraud alert on every account connected to my social security number. I requested a credit freeze across all 3 bureaus. I changed every password, every security question, every backup email. I went through every financial account I had ever set up and removed my mother and brother as emergency contacts or authorized users. It took until 9 in the morning. My coffee went cold. I didn't notice. My phone started ringing around 7. My brother first, then my mother, then my aunt who lives in Phoenix who I had not spoken to in 3 years. Then my mother again. Then a number I didn't recognize that turned out to be my uncle calling from a different phone because I had already blocked his usual one. I let every call go to voicemail. The texts were different. Those I read, once, the way you read a letter you know is going to make you angry because you need to know what you're dealing with. My brother. Nora, please don't do this. I have a plan, just give me 72 hours, I swear on everything I will fix this. Just don't call the police. They're going to arrest me, please. My mother. This is not who we raised you to be. You are breaking this family apart over money. Money can be replaced. A family cannot. My aunt. Your mother is devastated. Your brother is terrified. Whatever happened, I'm sure it can be worked out without getting the law involved. Please just call your mom. My uncle. You need to think about what you're doing here. Family loyalty means something. When did you get so cold? I read each one. I set my phone down. I thought about my mother's line, money can be replaced, and I thought about how she had never once in her life had to replace it with her own effort. Not really, not the way I had. I thought about the electric bill I had covered at 17 when the power was shut off and my parents were between jobs and my brother was only 9 and scared of the dark. I thought about the car payment I had quietly added to my budget at 23 so my mother could keep the only vehicle she had. I thought about the dental bill, the security deposit for their apartment after the foreclosure, the groceries I charged to my cats tight during the months they called tight. I had been the bridge loan my entire adult life. They had just finally decided to formalize it. The closing did not happen on Thursday. The lender needed documentation, the fraud alert needed to process. The police report needed to be logged against the loan. I sat in my apartment on Thursday afternoon with the curtains open and watched the sunlight move across the floor and felt something I hadn't expected. Not grief, not rage, just clarity. Clarity feels strange when you've been used to fog. It's almost uncomfortable at first, like stepping outside after being in a dim room for too long. Your eyes have to adjust. I adjusted. 2 days later, my brother was contacted by the lender's fraud department and then by the detective assigned to my police report. He called me immediately after. His voice had changed. The rehearsed calm was completely gone. They're going to charge me, he said. Nora, they're actually going to charge me. This is a felony. Do you understand what a felony does to a person's life? I can't get a job. I can't rent an apartment. I can't. I know what a felony does, I said. You should have thought about that. You could drop the report. You could tell them it was a misunderstanding. They'd believe you, it's your word. You could save me from this. I thought about the loan officer's voice at 3:47 the morning. I thought about driving to a police station before sunrise. I thought about 48 hours before my closing. No, I said. Why? Why are you doing this to me? And that question, that framing "you are doing this to me," was the most honest thing he had ever accidentally said to me. Because that was exactly how they saw it. My boundaries as aggression. My self-protection as attack. My refusal to absorb the consequences of their choices as cruelty directed at them personally. "I'm not doing anything to you," I said. "You did it to yourself. You did it to me first, and now you're living with the thing you built." I hung up. I didn't block him yet. I just let the line go quiet. My mother showed up at my apartment complex 4 days later. I saw her from my window, standing in the parking lot in the gray wool coat she'd had for 15 years, the one I had bought her for Christmas the year I got my first real paycheck. She stood there for a while before she found my buzzer. When she pressed it, I watched her on the intercom camera. She looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I had just stopped making myself smaller to match her. I didn't buzz her in. She pressed the button again. Then a third time. Then she found my number and called it, and I watched her on the screen while the call rang through to voicemail. Then she stood there in the cold for another few minutes, and then she left. I made myself a cup of tea. I sat on my couch. I did not feel like a monster. I felt like a person who had finally stopped volunteering for a job she had never applied for. My cousin reached out that weekend. She was gentler than the others she always had been, and her text didn't come with an agenda attached, or at least it tried not to. "Hey, I know this is a mess. I'm not taking sides. I just wanted to check in on you. Are you okay?" I stared at that message for a while. Are you okay? It was the first time anyone in my family had asked me that in the middle of all of this. Not "are you going to drop the charges?" Not "are you going to let your brother off the hook?" Just "are you okay?" I typed back. "Honestly, yeah. I think I actually am." She replied with a heart. Then, "For what it's worth, I think what you're doing takes a lot of courage." I didn't cry until that moment. Not through the police report, not through the ruined closing, not through my brother's phone call or my mother at the buzzer. But that small, uncomplicated sentence from someone who just saw me as a person and not as a resource that undid me, just briefly, just enough. I cried for about 6 minutes. Then I washed my face and called my lender. The fraud investigation took 11 weeks. 11 weeks of documentation, follow-up calls, letters from the bank's legal team, a meeting with the detective, a formal statement, a credit bureau dispute process that required me to send the same documents to 3 different addresses. I kept a spreadsheet. Every contact, every date, every reference number. I named the file returning to sender. During those 11 weeks, I went to therapy for the first time. Not because I was falling apart, but because I was disturbingly together, and I wanted to understand why untangling from my family felt like relief rather than loss. My therapist asked me, in our second session, when I first started feeling responsible for the emotional and financial stability of my parents. I answered without hesitating. 15. My dad got laid off and my mom started crying at the dinner table, and I told her I would figure something out. And then I did. I picked up weekend shifts at the grocery store, and I gave her whatever was left after I bought my own school supplies. My therapist looked at me steadily. "How did that feel?" "When you fixed it?" "Safe," I said. And then I heard myself say it and understood, maybe for the first time at the level of bone, that this was the whole thing. That I had been trained to equate my usefulness with my safety. That love in my family had always come preloaded with a transaction. That I had learned to anticipate what they needed before they asked, because the version of me who provided was the version they wanted to keep. The version of me who said no was inconvenient. A malfunction. Something to be corrected or shamed back into compliance. I started saying no to a lot of things in those 11 weeks. Not dramatically. Just quietly, steadily, like pulling a thread. My aunt texted asking me to reconsider for the sake of family harmony. I replied, "I've thought about it. My answer is no." And I left the conversation there. My uncle called and left a voicemail about how I was burning bridges I might need someday. I did not call back. A mutual family friend reached out on behalf of my mother, asking if there was anything that could be done to mend things. I replied that the situation was in the hands of the legal system and I wished everyone well. Each time, I noticed something. The guilt that had always been loud in my chest, the alarm that sounded whenever I disappointed someone who needed something from me, was getting quieter. Not gone, but quieter. Like a fire that isn't being fed. The fraud was confirmed. The loan was flagged as identity theft. The lender removed it from my credit report. My score came back. The credit freeze was lifted. My lender called me on a Friday afternoon to tell me that we could reschedule the closing. I cried again. Harder this time. Alone in my kitchen, one hand on the counter, ugly crying in a way I hadn't since I was a teenager. Not from sadness. From the specific relief of something you worked for not being taken from you. Of surviving the thing that was designed to stop you. The new closing was on a Wednesday morning in November. Gray sky, cold enough to see my breath. I wore a red coat I had bought specifically for the occasion. I sat at the table in the title company's conference room, and I signed my name, my real name, my actual signature, the one that belongs to me on 32 separate documents. The title agent handed me 2 keys on a simple ring with a paper tag that said my address on it. I drove straight there from the office. I sat in the driveway for a few minutes. The oak tree in the backyard had lost most of its leaves. The yellow door was exactly the right shade of yellow. I unlocked the front door. I walked into the empty hallway. My footsteps echoed. I had never owned an Echo before. I stood in the middle of the empty living room, and I thought about the morning the loan officer called me. The 3:47 a.m. That was supposed to end this story before it could finish. The phone call from my brother. My mother's voice saying money can be replaced. The parking lot, the wool coat, the buzzer pressed 3 times with no answer. I thought about 11 weeks of paperwork and the spreadsheet named returning to sender and 6 minutes of crying over a single text message that just asked if I was okay. I thought about my signature, which is mine, which was always mine, which no one is allowed to borrow. My brother was formally charged. I didn't attend any hearings. I received updates from the detective, and I processed them the same way I processed most things now, calmly, with the lights on, alone in a house that was mine. My mother sent an email 3 weeks after the closing. The subject line said, "Can we talk?" The body of the email was 2 paragraphs. The first paragraph was about how much she missed me. The second paragraph was about how she hoped I could find it in my heart to not let this define our relationship. There was no paragraph about what had happened. No sentence that began with the word sorry. No acknowledgement of the morning I drove to a police station before sunrise. No recognition of the 11 weeks or the closing that almost wasn't or the 7 years that could have been erased in a single conversation she had chosen not to have with me. I read the email twice. I did not reply. Not because I am cold. Not because I am unforgiving. But because an apology that never arrives isn't a misunderstanding, it's a statement. It says, I understand what I did, and I believe you should absorb it anyway, because that is what you have always done. I had stopped doing what I had always done. Christmas came. My first Christmas in my house. I bought a small tree and put it in the corner by the window. My cousin came over with her boyfriend, and we made dinner together. The chaotic kind where 3 people are trying to use the same counter space and something always gets burned and it doesn't matter. She had brought a bottle of wine and a card that said, on the inside, in her handwriting, "Proud of you for choosing yourself. Love you." I put the card on my mantle. It's still there. My mother still posts on social media. Cryptic things about sacrifice and ungrateful children and the loneliness of loving people who don't love you back. Her friends comment. Some of them know who she means. Some of them don't need to know. I am not in those comment sections. I removed myself from those conversations a long time ago. My brother's case is ongoing. I don't track it closely. I gave my statement, I submitted my documentation, I did what I was supposed to do, and now it lives in a folder on my desktop alongside the credit bureau letters and the lender correspondence and the police report number that I memorized without trying. What I want to tell you, if you are watching this and you recognize any piece of it, if you have ever been the person who drove to the police station before sunrise or sat at a kitchen table at 4 in the morning reading texts that blamed you for the thing that was done to you, is this. You are not cold because you stopped being a resource. You are not selfish because you required people to ask before they took. You are not breaking something precious when you hold a boundary. You are simply insisting on being treated like a person rather than a provision. It has been 8 months since the notification came at 3:47 inches the morning. My credit score is higher now than it was before any of this happened, which is almost funny if you look at it a certain way. My house has furniture in it. The oak tree in the backyard is starting to bud again. I painted the hallway a color called Quiet Morning, which is a shade of soft green that catches the light differently depending on the hour. I wake up in this house, and the first feeling is not bracing. It is not preparation. It is not the low-level readiness I carried for years, the way you stay half alert when you know something can always go wrong and it might land on you to fix it. The first feeling is just stillness. Mine. Fully and finally mine. I stopped being available for withdrawal. And in the silence where the guilt used to live, I found out who I actually am when no one is making a claim on me. It turns out I am someone who paints her hallway's quiet morning green and cries for exactly 6 minutes when someone asks if she's okay and keeps a card on her mantle that says "Proud of you for choosing yourself." I am someone who owns her own echo, and I am not going back.